This is going to be my last video in the series that I've done on why everyone should vote UKIP 2015. I said at the start that I would talk about UKIP's political mess-ups. I'm going to talk a wee bit about immigration, and I'm going to talk about the reasons why you should vote UKIP based on what they said they can do in their manifesto. So the first thing I'm going to be talking about is the political mess-ups, some of the kip-ups. Let's just say for fun that they're called kip-ups. Let's just say I'm going to be looking into some of the kip-ups and why it actually doesn't matter. I don't know what's happened with the political left in recent times, but it seems to me anyway that the political left, I don't know if the media are involved in helping the political left, the popular left, or if it's just that the popular left, the political left are better at selling themselves to the media. But it seems that basically if you're on the left and you promote a nice friendly face, you can basically almost get away with anything. You can package your ideas in a nice friendly way, even if behind the scenes those ideas are quite dark, mysterious and authoritarian. Then, as I've shown in my previous video about the Greens, then you can get away with it, and the media doesn't seem to pick up on it. I explained things about the fake left and the fake right in the past. UKIP are always under the spotlight for things that they do in the media. They're always under the spotlight, even if the things that they've done are fairly mild, or even if sometimes they've actually been misrepresented completely, and they've still made a scandal story out of that. The Conservatives have done plenty of wrong things and plenty of bad things, and that's largely they've largely escaped. Less so than the popular left and the political left, I would say, but even the Conservatives have made big, massive and major mistakes, and they haven't particularly been dragged through the media for it. But UKIP are constantly dragged through the media, and we've got a popular left party, a rising growth popularity, the Greens, and it's came out that they have less black and ethnic minority candidates than UKIP do. But they're not under fire for it in the media, they're not under pressure whatsoever. If this was a story about if UKIP were at the bottom, the very bottom for black and ethnic minority representation, you can guarantee that it would have been in the papers, and it would have been on the radios, and it would have been on the TV media for probably 2-3 days in a row, and then consistently brought up afterwards, after that as well, as a kind of stick to beat UKIP down with. But it's turned out that the Green Party, who are on the popular left and they've received no criticism for it in the media, no sustained criticism whatsoever, actually have less black and ethnic minority candidates than UKIP do. And there's also a lot made about UKIP and their supposedly racist and supposedly having racist policies, racist ideals, and whatever you see in the mainstream. They've even the kip-ups that they've done, some of the political mess-ups that they've done, are supposed to be the media-friendly exterior of UKIP falling away and revealing the true identity of UKIP, which is racism and xenophobia. But I'm going to take you now and show you the exact figures of all the parties. It's there for you in a graph, it's very clear to see, and the actual numbers that people have of black and ethnic minority candidates is largely the same. All of them could be doing better, to be honest, but the only ones who are under the spotlight is UKIP. Conservative are the best at 11%, Labour have got 9% of their candidates are black and ethnic minority, Lib Dems are 10%, UKIP are 6%, and the Greens are 4%. Basically all of them could be doing better, and there's no great difference between them. Even the best at 11% is not it's not even double UKIP. UKIP have got 6%. It's not even a massive difference, but from the way it's reported in the media, you would think that UKIP are these evil, nasty people that don't want to represent black and Asian people, but that's clearly not evident in the facts because all of them are performing fairly poorly, to be honest. Because it says that 17% of Britain is black and ethnic minority, but none of the parties are reaching that, and all of them are further behind than they should be. And the Greens are the absolute worst, and you can guarantee that if it was UKIP who was the absolute worst, it would be reported over and over and over again. What's also hypocritical for the Greens is that in their party political broadcast they've got a black woman to narrate the video and to front the video. So they've got the cheek to use a black woman to front the party political broadcast, but they've got actually the worst black and ethnic minority representation out of all the parties. That's a bit cheeky, isn't it? I want to take you and show you just even the most up-to-date information. I'm on Twitter and I follow lots of UKIP candidates, and to be honest, they're actually they tweet pictures of Asian and black people who come up and support them and say that they're going to vote for them, and they tweet pictures of them fairly often, quite often. And I would say that UKIP are actually very proud of the support that they get from black and ethnic minority people. They celebrate it more than the other parties do, and I think they're actually very proud of having the support from black and ethnic minority people. Here we can see Mark Reckless, one of the two current UKIP MPs, has got black people represented on his actual Twitter page quite prominently. He's obviously proud. Now I'll show you, and I'll just take you down to show you some of the most current things that he has been tweeting about, to prove that he does actually tweet things about Asian people fairly often. Asian and black people. There we go. He's saying that you should support UKIP's first Sikh councillor, Paul Rai, in North Strood. So that's me just randomly coming onto his page now here to do this video, and within the last week or so he's been tweeting support for an Asian UKIP candidate. Here's another part here. Mark Reckless retweeted that the Irish fought in Gallipoli in World War I, so he's being fair to the ethnic minorities, not just black and Asian ethnic minorities but also Irish people. Centenary events like Gallipoli to put history right, and Ireland brave men deserve legacy, not sectarian exploitation. So he's an actual UKIP MP saying that, and that's just in the most recent few weeks that he's been tweeting things. So what about Douglas Carswell? He's also a UKIP MP. And there he's saying to support Mohammed Khan for Clacton, the UKIP candidate for Clacton. He says he was out leafleting alongside Mohammed Khan in Clacton. So that's just a couple examples of UKIP being proud of their black and Asian ethnic minority candidates. I know that both Douglas Carswell and Mark Reckless have tweeted pictures of Asian and black supporters who've come up to them in the past, and they've tweeted them and they've been quite proud of it. I'll show you something else that was reported recently. When UKIP launched their manifesto, someone asked them why is there's only one black face in your manifesto booklet. And this is what happened when they said that. All the black and Asian candidates stood up and everybody cheered. That is proof that UKIP are proud of their black and Asian candidates. And it says, question comes in about the lack of black faces in the UKIP manifesto, then this happens. And that's them all standing up and wanting to be counted as black and ethnic minority candidates for UKIP. And they want to be known and give UKIP support, and that's what happened. It was actually reported very differently in the media though. It was reported as though somehow that was negative. Now I'll show you something else. The Conservatives have actually been clamping down on migration from out with the EU, so to suggest that UKIP are racist or xenophobic or that there's some kind of perfect way of having immigration is not backed up by reality, because whatever happens, we're going to have some kind of control on immigrations. And what's not widely reported is that the coalition government, the Conservatives and the Lib Dems, currently have put a cap on the immigrants that come from outside of the EU, and that is mostly from Commonwealth countries, so black people, Asian people, Americans, Canadians, Australians, they have had trouble coming and living here. And also the Commonwealth countries, people from the Caribbean, people from Nigeria, people from India have actually had problem bringing their family members to the UK, because currently we're discriminating against people from outside of the EU, and this is the Migration Observatory. Non-EU labour immigration. Non-EU labour immigration has been the focus of considerable policy change since the coalition government came to power. Perhaps the most well-known new policy is the annual cap on skilled non-EU workers, and that's our friends from the Commonwealth who fought in the wars with us and helped us out, and the Queen invited those people here after the wars to come and boost up our economy, because we had lost so many people. We had an abundance of jobs, and black and Asian people and people from the Commonwealth came here and filled those jobs and built Britain back up again and made Britain great again. And now these are the people who, because of the EU, are suffering. They're not going to be able to, they're finding it hard to bring their families here. The reason that they're having to do that is because they do have to cut back on migration. They know that, but at this moment in time they're being pro-EU, but they're reducing the amount of immigrants that they can bring from the rest of the world, which is mainly the Commonwealth. And as I said in a previous video, those relationships are paid for in blood. These people fought in the war with us. They supported Britain during that time. And that's not to say that people in the EU didn't, but unfortunately a lot of countries at the start of the war, they actually fell. The amount of countries that were left to actually fight against the Nazis, to fight against Germany, was limited. A lot of the countries actually fell. Their army men would have became either killed or became prisoners of war, so they couldn't actually do any fighting. A lot of these countries, the countries that could do the actual fighting, was basically Russia, the UK and the countries from the Commonwealth through the main bulk of the war. And they're saying that they're clearly putting a cap on non-EU workers. Perhaps the most well-known policy is the annual cap on skilled non-EU workers. It was initially set for 22,000 a year. Other policy changes already implemented include a higher minimum skills threshold, raised English language requirements, and a smaller shortage occupation list for all migrant workers entering under the Tier 2 of the points-based system. So they already have a points-based system, but they're just not applying it to people from the EU, they're applying it to our long-standing friends in the Commonwealth only, and they're making sure that these people can speak English when they come here, which is not a requirement for the EU. I'll show you something else. The Conservatives are currently doing it, and Ed Miliband, his method of reducing immigration is also going to be by hurting our friends in the Commonwealth. He vowed to reduce non-EU immigration. So that's their answer. If you're from the Commonwealth, if you're Canadian, if you're Australian, if you're American as well, they're not in the Commonwealth, but it is happening to American people also. If you're from the Caribbean, if you're from Nigeria, if you're from Bangladesh, if you're from Pakistan, if you're from India, Ed Miliband's going to make it harder for you and your family to come here. Or if you already are here, he's going to make it harder for your family members to join you. But it's only UKIP who are ever under fire for any of this. This is like a anecdotal story about a first-hand account of how someone from Canada found it very hard to come and join in the Britain In short, life was good, better than now anyway, when the British weather and economy seemed locked in a death match for the title of a historic new low, and despite this I find myself back in Canada awaiting yet another visa, separated from my 8-month-old son by an ocean. He had to stay in London with his father for mandatory medical treatment, and my residency permit was up, with no clear idea of when or if I will be allowed back in the country and reunited with my family. I'm bad for business, but more importantly bad for votes. David Cameron has promised to halve net immigration to Britain by the next election, a promise he seems to have made because it sounded good in a speech, not because it was really achievable. The problem is that he has no control over EU nationals who come to settle, so the only way he can meet his target is to deter people like me, non-EU nationals. Another thing is where people who are already resident in the UK are finding it hard to bring their wife or their spouse, their wife or their husband, to the UK to live with them, even if their partner is a UK national. The Surinder Singh route is a method for British citizens to secure UK immigration rights for the non-European spouses who are unable to join their partners because of several changes in UK immigration law aimed at reducing net migration. Through EU regulations on free movement of peoples, it provides a window of opportunity to reunite UK citizens with their spouses in the increasing number of cases where the new rules on income and other additional measures mean that spouses of UK citizens would otherwise be separated by the requirements of increasingly strict visa controls. The Surinder Singh route involves living and working elsewhere in the European Economic Area for a period of 3 or more months, and then asserting the right associated with EEA citizenship and free movement to gain access to their own country while being covered by European law. In so doing, the Surinder Singh route triggers rights of free movement that have otherwise been removed from UK citizens by UK legislation. So what they're saying there is that you actually have more rights, European citizens have more rights than UK people within their own country. That's how ridiculous the scenario has become, because they do need to cut down on immigration, but they can't do it within the EU because they're signed up to the EU trading bloc and all that comes with it. And even though it's supposed to be for trading, it's actually a political union as well, where they can supersede a lot of the laws and rights that we have as UK citizens. And we're seeing here that European peoples have priority over UK people when it comes to bringing your family members here. But if you go and work somewhere in the EU for 3 months, then your free movement of people's rights comes into effect, and then you can bring your spouse to the UK. But otherwise, if you didn't do that, you wouldn't have been able to do it just as a UK citizen. You have to go and enact your European rights, because the European free movement right supersedes the rights of actual UK citizens who have family members, a spouse that is a non-EU person. Another thing is that every single ethnic group in Britain wants to cut migration. More than half want a big drop in numbers coming to the country. Voters in every ethnic group want the number of migrants coming to Britain to be cut, reveals a report today. The survey found that 79% of respondents thought immigration levels should be reduced, with 59% wanting a big drop. The support for stricter border controls was shared by people from all ethnic groups, according to analysis by campaign group Migration Watch. 60% of Asian respondents want immigration reduced. 38% want it down by a lot. 57% of black UK citizens want immigration to be reduced, and 32% want it to be cut by a lot. For people of mixed race, 60% want immigration to be reduced and 30% want a big drop. And that's figures from Migration Watch. So this kind of, as I was saying about the protectionism of the popular left, it seems like it's that to me. Maybe it's not that, and maybe just the left are better at packaging their ideas and making them market friendly, newspaper friendly, but it seems that the popular left always wants to put the idea of race and xenophobia onto UKIP and UKIP supporters, but the truth is that every single ethnic group in Britain, white people, black people, Asian people, overwhelmingly want immigration to be reduced, and large percentages of them want it to be reduced by a lot. What is the real difference between the current establishment? No one's talking about the racism that's in the current establishment. The current establishment have got plenty of incidences that we can point to of institutionalised forms of racism. Now Labour, again coming back to the popular left, who never seem to get called out on it, but Labour during their time passed Terrorism Act 2000, Anti-Terrorism Crime and Security 2001, Prevention of Terrorism 2005, Terrorism Act 2006 and the Counter-Terrorism Act 2008, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 anti-terror laws, and it's under the terror laws that the police are able to stop and search you, probably, I think, without probable cause. I think that recently in 2012 they brought in laws because it was having a harmful effect in the black and ethnic minority communities. It was having a harmful effect, so they changed it that they did need probable cause. The reason that you get stopped and searched all the time is because of the anti-terror laws. So the police are up to 28 times more likely to stop and search black people. Human Rights Watchdog warns of racial profiling as data reveals under 3% of stop and searches leads to an arrest. It's actually Labour that passed those laws and allowed that to go through now. I suppose we could then argue the merits of anti-terror laws and what that actually means. Personally, I think they've been completely useless in helping us to fight terrorism anyway. We haven't actually stopped, as far as I can see, any kind of major terrorism events, and I think it's part of the... I've spoke about it before in my previous video on when I was saying about the Greens and the left who want to bring in some form of like world government, communism taking control of your life through the Green movement. They want to bring that in, and that is an elitist plan that's funded, and the idea is then sold to you through the left, through the Green movement, through climate change. And I think, to be honest, the elitists are doing the same on the right, and you're selling you the idea of signing up to global governance based on terrorism. And I don't even really believe the political narratives, the narratives that we see in the mainstream media about terrorism anyway. I don't actually believe those narratives. I think that we could be doing a better job of actually fighting terrorism face to face. Labour have been part of bringing in all these various terror acts where you can be locked up if you're a suspected terrorist for 21 days, 39 days without crime, without evidence, and you can be locked up for that amount of time. And the Terror Act is the one that allows them to stop and search you basically for no reason. And it's happening much more to black people, so you have to think to yourself, what right does the establishment have to say that UKIP are racist? Well, the establishment is already racist anyway. I certainly don't believe that UKIP are racist, but the establishment constantly want to frame the debate that they are not racist, but UKIP are racist. And I'm just showing you that a vote for the establishment is certainly not a vote for non-racism. I actually think it would be better if UKIP were in power, because people are so hyper aware of their kip-ups, their mess-ups, their political mess-ups, that I think that people would be very, very quick to bring UKIP to account. They would be constantly watching for them. I think the situation that we currently have is much worse, where we've got racism in the establishment, but no one's really talking about it, or when it does happen, it's largely swept under the carpet and it goes away. I actually think if UKIP were in power, what would happen is so many people would be outraged if UKIP did try to do anything racist or something along those lines, that it would then create political action, and people, instead of sitting on their butts not doing anything, if UKIP were in power and something negative happened, then people would be very, very quick to jump on it and demand justice, and then that way they probably would get justice. But at this moment in time, we've got racism in the establishment anyway, but the political, it doesn't really get reported on, and the political establishment then just ends up by default getting away with it as usual. And UKIP actually have a policy where you can recall your MP. No one else is giving that. So if something did happen that was considered to be very negative, people would actually, UKIP are giving you the power to recall your MP anyway. So in those circumstances, you would be able to recall your MP and either vote someone else in, get them sacked, and vote someone else in. And here we go. Nigel Farage urges UKIP to take a positive stance on the immigration debate. So UKIP are well known for promoting the Commonwealth, and even just very recently at the start of the year he said he wants an amicable divorce from the EU and for Britain to re-embrace the Commonwealth and inject a positive note into the immigration debate. The establishment idea that UKIP are racist is not true. UKIP are proud of their black and Asian candidates and their black and Asian voters, and I'm also a person who, I don't have much to gain from, as a Scotsman, I don't have much to gain from UKIP being in power, because they're saying that they're going to end the Barnett formula, but to be honest, I want Scotland to become a less dependent country, and I want it to stand on its own 2 feet, and I want it to move on. I think it's the times to stop looking at the system and what the system does to you or does to people who you see on the bottom rung of society. Although that is bad, and we do need to fight against it, I think that it's also time for people to step up and realise that there's also a lot more that we could do. It's time for people to stand up and take control of themselves and be less reliant on government, and by that way, by default, the people will win, because the government will have to reduce itself and it will have less control over your life. If you take control of yourself and take control of your family's life then, and don't rely on government for almost anything, then that is freedom will come as a byproduct of that. So although I do think that we do need to watch out for government corruption and help the people at the bottom, probably the best thing that any person can do, which is clearly within their own power, is just to take control of themselves. Now, I want to talk about political correctness to show you that it can work both ways, and political correctness is just now a dogma that has actually stifled debate in the real world, in the real society, and black people aren't able to get things off their chest that they think about white culture and where white culture is going wrong and where white society is going wrong, and white people are not able to get things off of their chest about where they perhaps think that their culture is being dumbed down and put to the bottom because of political correctness. They are not able to say things that annoy them about black culture or Asian culture. White people aren't allowed to say those things now out in the acceptable world, and to be honest, that's just stifled debate. It hasn't helped anyone. It hasn't helped us get over racism, and it hasn't helped us to come together more as communities. When we talk about the things, unfortunately, the way humans' minds work, I think, is, unfortunately, unless we publicly get things, negative things off of our chests in the public arena, that is when we all come together and we realise, you know what, those people aren't bad, this person's not bad, that person's not bad. It's when we get the negative things off of our chests in a public arena that is when people realise, do you know what, we've got all of these things off our chest, and that is now, we realise how similar we are. Once we get things off of our chests, we realise how similar we are, whereas at the moment, political correctness is pushing down on people, and it's creating a compression effect where white people feel like they don't get to say the full extent of what they think, black people feel like they don't get to say the full extent of what they think, and neither society can then come together and meld and realise at the end of the day how similar they actually are. And this is an example of this here. A Sikh regiment. They want to create a Sikh regiment in the British Army. So there they are there. That's the kind of things that they would wear. That's the kind of things that they would want to show, be ceremonial about it, be proud about it, and show that they are proud British Sikh soldiers. And it's saying here that the MOD scrapped the plan in 2007 over concerns over segregation, even though the Sikhs actually fought in, the Sikh regiments fought in both the UK World Wars. But yesterday MPs urged ministers to do away with political correctness. So this is an example of political correctness actually holding back a movement towards communities intertwining. And Sikh leaders are saying that people would be proud to have a Sikh regiment, and that they could get 700. They could get a 700 strong regiment just straight away. I want to kind of go back quickly and just maybe even recap on things, even for my own, if I'm a UKIP supporter. I want to just quickly touch on the actual history of immigration, to let black and Asian people know and other EU people know that immigration is different now to how we had it in the past, and also to reiterate to maybe perhaps UKIP supporters who are maybe a bit, maybe are xenophobic. I just want to reiterate to them that there's certain groups of people, I believe Commonwealth people, have the actual right to basically come here. I think that also Britain as a country has a right to control its immigration and decide who comes in, and unfortunately if that makes it harder for everyone, maybe that's perhaps what we need in this country for a little while. But of the people who are going to come to this country, I believe that the Commonwealth people have the right more than anyone else. So the reason that immigration is different now is because after World War II, a lot of men had died, a lot of people had died, and there was a labour abundance in the UK, and so people from the Commonwealth were actually invited to the UK to come and fill those jobs. And that's what they done, and they done a great job of it. But now we've got completely different circumstances where people from the EU are allowed to come in at will with no limits. We don't actually have a labour shortage either. We've actually got the opposite. We've got lots of our own people who are struggling for jobs. We don't actually have a labour shortage, but people are still allowed to come here from the EU completely. It doesn't matter how many would want to come, they can come if they want to come. And as I've shown you just previously, that we're actually discriminating against the Commonwealth people. So when the Second World War ended in 1945, it was quickly recognised the reconstruction of the British economy required a large influx of immigrant labour. The Royal Commission on Population reported in 1949 that immigrants of good stock would be welcomed without reserve, and potential newcomers from the Caribbean and elsewhere soon became aware of the pressing needs of the labour market in the UK. Post-war immigration also attracted for the first time large numbers of workers and their families from outside Europe, mainly from the Caribbean and from India and Pakistan. So I believe that people from the Caribbean, India, Pakistan, Nigeria, Canada, Australia, whoever was in the Commonwealth, they have an actual right to come here if they want to come. based on a points system. At this moment in time, I believe that we do need to cut down our immigration considerably, but again, I would give the priority to the Commonwealth people, because they fought in the world wars with us and they helped us build back our country up when, after the war, when we had a labour abundance, an abundance of jobs which needed filled. And to be honest, there probably was racism against those people at the time, because the society was different, right? But not everyone. That doesn't mean that because that was happening then, that is the same as what's happening now. Just because people are against immigration now does not automatically make them racist. There was a racist past in Britain, but I think largely it has went away. And political correctness maybe even perhaps did have its time, but it's now being used as a dogma and an agenda against the people. So another thing that I want to remind you is, because UKIP have made mistakes, then you know that they must be pro-free speech. They must be pro-free speech. They've got no choice to be pro-free speech, because they do say things which are slightly less common than what you would normally hear in the political and the media mainstream. Now, every single party in the UK is admitting that Britain needs to cut down on its immigration, but if UKIP had never even originally pushed the issue, it might never have become a mainstream accepted policy for going into the general election 2015, but now every single party is basically saying that they do want to curb immigration. So all of them would still be going with the party line and the politically correct party line, but because UKIP have pushed the issue, and the polls have shown that the British public and even immigrants and black and Asian people are overwhelmingly in support of controlling immigration, that is now has become an issue for the general election 2015. But if UKIP had never pushed the envelope of political correctness, it would never have been on the table. So UKIP do believe in free speech, and they do believe in protecting people's free speech. So that means that if you hate UKIP, as lots of these people in these pictures show, then under UKIP at least you will know that your right to say that you don't like UKIP will be protected, because UKIP have made their own mistakes, their own political mishaps and their own political mistakes. So there's no way that they could then turn round and say that other people weren't allowed to say certain things. Everyone under UKIP is a pro-free speech party, and if you hate UKIP, you'll be able to say that currently the establishment is very, very politically correct, and that is moving us toward a controlled society where certain sections of people are not allowed to say things. And that's, as I say, that's not helping anyone. It's compressing the real issues, it's compressing the way people feel about each other. They're not allowed to discuss publicly in public arenas and public forums to say what really annoys them about other types of people and other types of cultures. What does annoy black people about white culture? Under UKIP you will be able to say those things, and those things will be protected, and that is important for society, in my opinion, because that means that people, once they get things off their chest, they realise how similar they are, instead of always realising their differences. The political correct society forces down on them, and then at that point they can only see the differences between themselves and others, and that's a negative thing for the society. It's having a negative impact on the society. But UKIP are not politically correct, and they believe in free speech, so even if you hate UKIP, your rights will be protected under UKIP. Now, people don't want to talk about the negative aspects of immigration. This is the Telegraph, a left-leaning paper, and they're saying the hard truths about immigration. So even in the Telegraph, a left-leaning paper which is traditionally pro-political correctness and pro-immigration, these studies measure what they measure, almost immeasurable but nonetheless real, are dynamic displacements effects that such heavy migration creates. Go to the heart of the UK establishment, the Pall Mall clubs, Sandhurst or City Library dinners. You'll struggle to find many or sometimes any native British people working there in lesser positions. These plush organisations no less than the coffee bars of London and Edinburgh or everywhere else, have opted to employ cheaper foreign workers, often with better qualifications and the willingness to work long hours to get on. Not long ago, young British people used these jobs to find a path into the world of work and progress through life. No longer a more systematic onslaught on British working class opportunity than mass immigration could not be invented. So I do have anecdotal stories myself about men who worked in the construction industry. They were self-employed builders, and because mainly Polish people, no offence to Polish people, I like Polish people, of the people that I know, but Polish builders mainly were coming here and they were working at rates that the British people just simply cannot compete with, because what you'll find with a lot of the EU immigrants is that they won't actually even live in this country, because the wages in Britain are much higher than the Polish average or the Romanian average. They'll come here, they'll work for 6 months, they'll build up a big pot of money, then they'll go away. So they're not actually spending a lot of money in the UK or paying a lot of tax in the UK, but they're coming here, they're making a lot of money, they're working long, hard hours. People say that they're good at their jobs. They might very well be good at their jobs, but at the end of the day, a working British man who has to pay the living standards of working in Britain, a Polish person can come here, work for 6 months, build up a big pot of money, then go home and live in Poland and only have to pay the living standards of what Poland is, but probably has cheaper goods, cheaper leisure, cheaper everything. Britain is an expensive country, so the British working man who maybe perhaps has 2 or 3 children, he has to set his prices at a certain level so that he can cover his costs, cover his overheads, and actually feed his family and have a bit of disposable income. So he will never ever ever be able to set his prices at the same level as the Polish man, because the Polish man can come here, earn money, then go home and have a cheaper standard of living, a cheaper lifestyle in Poland. So the British man is never ever able to set his prices at the same level as the Polish man. That is completely unfair, and I know people now who work in my industry, which is administration, and they have been forced out of their jobs because they cannot compete with the prices that mainly Polish builders can offer on their goods and services. And the same thing is happening to young British people, maybe retired people would maybe retire, okay, right? People would maybe retire and then they would take a part-time job, but now older people are staying in the working world for longer because they probably know that when they leave their job they're not going to be able to get a part-time job, and they still might need to support their retirement income. So older people are staying in their jobs longer. It's having an exponential effect on the labour market. And lots of people, they're saying here that they have better qualifications and they have a willingness to work long hours. So that means that if you're an employer and you've got someone who wants to work in a bar and you're used to having a high turnover of staff, right? If you get the chance to get someone who is actually an immigrant, and you know that they will stay working with you for a long time because they'll have to find their feet in the UK, they'll probably be very pleased to get that job. They'll maybe have an actual degree, even although they're wanting to work in a bar, they might actually have a degree, so they'll lower their standards, right? So they're getting high quality for low price, these employers, in the lower end of the labour market, the low skilled end of the labour market. So that means that young British people who need to get on the jobs ladder and get something on their CV to say that they've actually worked somewhere, they are finding it much harder to actually get jobs and compete with people who are willing to work for long hours, they're willing to do lots of overtime, they're willing to be there whenever the person needs, just to get on and actually make a way in the UK. There's nothing wrong with that, but realistically we are actually pushing our own people out, whether they be black people, Asian people or white people, any kind of naturalised British citizen I'm talking about here, all of those people Commonwealth people are being pushed out of the jobs, whereas other people can come over here and take those jobs. And that means there is no pressure. All the competition is for the people trying to get the jobs. There is no competition for people at the low skilled end of the labour market. There's constantly people there to take the job, because there is an overabundance of low skilled labour. So whether it's wrong or whether it's right to cut down on immigration, the government actually does have a duty to cut down on immigration, to help the people who actually do live in this country now, whether they're a second generation immigrant or they're a family who've lived here for their whole life and they're naturalised British citizens. It doesn't actually matter. What matters is we need to at some point stem the flow of immigrants that are coming, because it's just constantly going to get worse, and it's constantly putting the competition between the actual people. There's no pressure on employers at the moment to improve their standards, improve their pay, improve their working conditions, improve incentives for people to come and work with them, bonuses of some kind, extra time off of some kind. There's no incentive for these people to actually improve what they offer to their employees. All the pressure is on the employees or potential employees to fight against each other, and that keeps wages low and it keeps standards low. Now what I want to talk about is, again, going back to the Commonwealth, what we're actually seeing here. This is the various routes of the ways of people who come into Europe currently, right? So Britain is having an influx of all different types of migrants, ones who come into Europe through these areas, right? And it's not countries which are in the Commonwealth or Britain has a long-standing history with. In modern studies at school, I learned that immigrants like to move to countries where there is already an established population of immigrants from a similar country to themselves, or from exact country from themselves. So Britain, going back to the post-war immigration, it was all people from the Commonwealth. So Britain has long-standing links with Nigeria, the Caribbean, Canada, Australia, Pakistan, Bangladesh, India. Okay, Britain has long-standing links with all these countries, but Britain are actually now getting, through the EU, a lot of immigrants from countries which we don't actually have any long-standing links with. For example, Somalia, Tunisia, Northern African countries, places like that. Okay, so let's have a wee look, and this is where they come in. They come into here, they land in Europe in these areas, and then after they establish themselves they can basically go to wherever they want in the EU. Now I think that's wrong, because Britain doesn't have any links with these countries, and these people are trying to come in, but there's no, as I say, going back to what I learned in modern studies at school, people like to go where there is already an established region of people that they are similar to, and that means that there is more integration in the society as a whole. So it's alright for us to accept Nigerian immigrants, accept Pakistani immigrants, accept Indian immigrants, accept Bangladeshi immigrants, accept Australian immigrants, because we already have, accept Irish immigrants, we already have established populations of these people, so they can come in and they can get help from their surrounding communities of people who are similar and exactly like them. And also, these countries all fought in the war with Britain. That means there is more integration in this society, because we already have established populations of Pakistanis, Indians, Nigerians, whoever it is. And that means there's more assimilation in general in this society, there's more harmony. So let's see who is actually coming in, mostly coming in through these areas. The largest migrant group by nationality is Syrians, then it's Eritrea, then it's Somalia, then it's Afghanistan. Now, Syria's not in the Commonwealth, Eritrea's not in the Commonwealth, Somalia's not in the Commonwealth, Afghanistan's not in the Commonwealth. So in my mind, although I understand that there's a lot of bad things going on in these countries, which might even be the fault of Britain, but UKIP are not pro-interventionist wars anyway, so I can maybe take you and show you some of that later on. I know a lot of this is to do with the warmongering of Britain, and that's the reason that it's happened, some of it. But to my mind, none of these countries are actually in the Commonwealth, so it's going to be harder for them to come here and integrate in the society, because there's no established population of Afghanis in the UK, there's no established population of Syrians or Somalians. If you're a Pakistani man or an Indian man or an Indian family, you can come here and you can probably find some similarity or a lot of similarity with people who already live here in this country, and it becomes easier to integrate and there is more harmony in the society. If these people are actual refugees, then that is different. I do think that Britain probably does have some moral obligation to accept refugees. But guess who said that? Nigel Farage has said that anyway. Nigel Farage calls for Syrian refugees to be allowed into the UK. The UK should take in some refugees from the Syrian civil war. Nigel Farage has said so. Of the groups who are coming in, the highest number coming into Europe, the highest number is Syrians, and they are fleeing a war. So Nigel Farage has already said that he would take part of his responsibility to help those number of people. But overall, I think that Britain should, if we went in the EU, we would be able to stop some Eritreans, some Somalians, some whatever it is, and it's not that I'm interested in stopping certain people, it's just for the reasons that I explained, that it's more harmonious for the society to accept people who already have established and historical links with the UK, and none of these countries actually do. Now, what I find interesting as well about the Syrians who come from Libya, right? A lot of the people that are the black Africans that are running away from Libya is because of the resultant war that was created, and actually the northern African Libyans, the naturalised Libyans who look more like Middle Eastern people and not like black Africans, they have actually been engaging in a race war against black people, and that's why black people want to run away from Libya. So in Britain we're obsessed with this faux racism. I call it faux racism. This faux racism that UKIP are racist, and UKIP are, because UKIP say some politically incorrect things, that automatically means that they're racist in this country. But overall, Britain is not a racist country, and there is no real evidence for that, and UKIP are not a racist party, and there is no real evidence for that. But people have become so obsessed, the media and the mainstream and the political left have become so obsessed with political correctness that they now think that if you don't say something that is the pure essence of political correctness, then that makes you a racist. But no one, how many times have you heard, be honest, how many times have you heard that black Africans are getting lynched in Libya and they're getting killed for no reason in Libya by, no offence, Muslim northern Muslim Africans in Libya? The ones that look more similar to Middle Eastern people are actually engaging in a race war against black Africans, and you haven't heard about that, and that is an example of real racism. But you haven't heard of that. All you hear about is this faux racism that is left at UKIP's door, and it's not actual real racism, it's just people saying things that are a bit politically incorrect. Mobs killed many black Africans, including Ethiopians, for being only black. The Brigade for Purging Slaves and Black Skin, Libyan rebel ethnic cleansing and lynching of black people. Obama's allies in Libya have systematically killed black Africans in towns and villages, and migrants targeted in Libya. Why black Africans are becoming target of Libya racists. So I could go on about it, but anyway. And here we go, here's another one. There's lots of violence in South Africa right now because of immigration. More than 300 suspects have been arrested in South Africa in connection with deadly attacks on foreigners. So you'll hear constantly in the news about this faux racism that is supposedly espoused by UKIP, but you're not actually hearing about real incidences of racism, in your face racism, real genuine racism. You're not hearing about it because it does not reflect the politically correct narrative. So the truth is that no one likes immigration. That is the real truth. No one actually likes immigration, and it's reasonable to put a cap on immigration because it makes the society unharmonious. And to be honest, Britain is never going to be this racist hellhole that people would like to make out. It's never ever going to be that, even if UKIP are in power and you think that UKIP are racist. It's just never going to happen because British people are not that way inclined. Britain has never had a revolution. Britain has never, very rarely, had any kind of uprising or major violent events. But the truth is that no one likes immigration. No one likes it, but UKIP are actually offering a solution. They're offering a more harmonious society to bring in mostly Commonwealth peoples and to reduce the numbers all round, to largely reduce them. Every single country in the world would go mad, a little bit mad, if there was mass immigration, as like what happened in South Africa. So I think I've made my points fair enough on the immigration issue, and I'll probably just now try and take you to some of the pro points that I think that you should vote for UKIP. Right, this is the actual UKIP manifesto, so I'll take you and I'll show you some of the best points that I think it's got for everybody, for Scottish people, black people, Asian people, white people, working class people, middle class people. So they're going to raise the income tax to 13,000, so that means minimum wage workers out of income tax altogether. They're going to abolish inheritance tax. I think that's a good thing because I know there's lots of people who maybe get dementia and things like that, and they're having to, families are having to put their elderly family members into care, and then they're actually having to sell the house to afford it and things like that. So if they abolished inheritance tax, then families would have a lot more money to actually maybe care for their elderly relatives. They're going to raise the threshold of the 40% income tax to £55,000, so that means they're helping the middle class there. That means if you are on 40% income tax, they're pushing it up, so they're taking less people. Less people will be paying the 55,000 income tax. They're going to say they're cutting down on corporate tax dodging by restoring British tax sovereignty, which we lost when we signed up to the EU. We will end the practice of businesses paying tax in whichever EU or associated country they choose. So that means if you're based in Britain, you'll have to pay your tax in Britain. But right now, you're not able to do that. You can, because it's the EU, you can set yourself up anywhere and say that your base is somewhere else. They're saying they're going to cut down on administration and bureaucracy. UKIP are going to scrap the bedroom tax. They're going to train and fund the cost of 800 advisors to work in food banks, so that the poorest people in our society have free and easy access to give them advice on maybe some of their social problems, maybe alcohol problems or gambling problems. Though UKIP are going to put advisors into food banks to maybe perhaps help people and get them back on the straight and narrow. They'll end the ATOS work capability assessments. UKIP are going to support carers by increasing the carers allowance from £62 a week to £73 a week. UKIP are going to make the family courts fairer on fathers, to help prevent thousands of fathers losing contact with their children each year when couples break up. UKIP will legislate for an initial presumption of 50-50 shared parenting. My mum is a teacher, and I know that how oppressive some of the school boards and the school examiners can be, and UKIP are saying that they're going to streamline the focus on education to the quality of teaching, learning and overall well-being of children rather than paperwork, school policies or tick box targets. UKIP are going to build more homes on brownfield sites. It would be possible to build up to 2.5 million houses on brownfield sites if developers were less reluctant to take advantage of this rich source of potential housing land. They will take steps to remove the barriers to brownfield builds with the aim of building 1 million homes on brownfield sites by 2025. And they plan to bring empty homes back into use, which is a known problem. Housing Charity Shelter reports there are 280,000 privately owned long-term empty homes in England, while other bodies such as the Empty Home Agency put the figure higher still. The most obvious way to create new homes is by bringing these empty homes back into use. We will place a statutory duty on local authorities to include a commitment to bringing empty properties back into use within their broader housing and planning strategies. So that's going to cut down on your having high rents and people being able to get on the property ladder. They're going to scrap HS2 and save £9 billion. Estimated cost is £50 billion, and HS2 Limited is planning to spend over £800 million in 2015-16 before the project even gets the final go-ahead. The government's own estimates show the cost will never be recouped. 0 hours contracts, okay, UKIP are saying that they're not going to completely ban them, but they're saying that if businesses hire 50 people or more on 0 hours contracts, then they must offer the employee either a full-time or part-time contract after 1 year if the workers request it. So that seems quite fair. We're going to reduce business rates, so small businesses are going to benefit. The small business rate relief currently only applies up to a rateable value of 12,000, meaning many small and medium-sized businesses receive no relief at all. And I know for a fact, you can check it for yourself, that since the recession 80% of businesses that have been started in Britain, self-employed businesses, have been started by women, and they're small businesses, so that is actually very pro. I showed you one that was pro-male with the fathers receiving the 50-50, assumed 50-50 parental control. I'm showing you one that's very pro-female because women have been starting businesses and they're becoming business owners, and this reducing the small business rate is very helpful to those women. UKIP are going to give you the right of recall, which is direct democracy. UKIP will give voters real power to sack their MP and scrap the bogus recall measures introduced by the Tory coalition. Under our proposals, if 20% of an MP's constituents demand it within a period of 8 weeks, a recall ballot will be triggered. We will extend this right of recall to all elected politicians, including councillors. So that's an excellent one. That is putting democracy directly in the hands of local people. UKIP are going to create hostels for veterans. Apparently there's a lot of veterans that come home and end up homeless. So by 2020 UKIP will build 8 halfway house veterans hostels with 200 rooms each, and modelled on similar hostels already in operation. Now, I'm not even a pro-war person or anything like that, but I do feel sorry for men who go and fight in wars and they end up coming home with psychological problems and etc. and things like that, and then they get totally left behind by the establishment, even though these men have went and fought in wars and done what they thought was best at the time. I do feel sorry for those people. And they will also include bereavement support for veterans. So that's very good, to give them the psychological help. I've often thought that men or women who go and fight in war and then they're just left behind to deal with their psychological problems, I think that's a good thing. UKIP are promoting trade, not aid, with the Commonwealth, etc. So removing barriers to trade is a far more effective way to tackle poverty than giving out handouts. They're talking about foreign aid, and I think that's a really good idea. We'll trade with these countries and have beneficial trade with them, rather than giving a proportion of our tax funded budget taxpayer funded budget directly to them that's being embezzled, and it's being administered in completely corrupt ways anyway. And also I think we already have lots and lots of private charities, so if you personally want to give privately to a private charity, then you do that, and that's a good thing, and there's already massive amounts of people in Britain who actually do that. But setting aside part of our UK taxpayer funded budget to just automatically give away is ridiculous as far as I'm concerned. If you want to do it privately, then do it, but apart from that, let's promote trade, not aid. Here's their budget changes. They're giving you the exact figures for each year, so they're saying by the end of their government, if they were in power, they could save Britain £32 billion, and within their first year they could save 8.25. I've already said in a previous video why I think UKIP would be the best for the economy. You can go back and look at that if you like, but I'm just showing you that they have the best manifesto. They've got it completely costed out there for you in exact figures. No one else has got that. With UKIP's costed plan, they're saying that they can put an extra £3 billion a year into the NHS. They can get 8,000 more GPs, and they can get 20,000 more nurses and 3,000 more midwives. The reason it's saying in England is because in Scotland it's a devolved power, health is a devolved power, so either way I think it's good for the NHS to get back on its feet, and I welcome it. So that's me, I'm finishing my series on these videos. I'm hoping that I've maybe brought a couple of people around to UKIP, maybe even if I haven't done it in time for this election, maybe perhaps it will be in time for the next election. For me personally, the political agenda at the moment is quite a pressing concern, and I do want people to come over to UKIP right now. I think I've shown you enough evidence to say UKIP would be best for the economy. I've compared them to the other alternative parties, SNP and Greens, and I've on the assumption, my assumption is that both Labour and Conservatives are completely controlled now by big business, and I've shown you a lot of the things. I've talked about awkward things to show people I'm not a racist, and UKIP are not racist at their heart. They do have the interests of everyone. I think Scottish people will do better, working class people will do better, middle class people will do better, pretty much everyone will do better under UKIP's plans, and I hope I've convinced a few people, and thanks very much for listening. Okay, thank you, bye.